Hey my friends, I am sneaking another few minutes to make a video because I happen to find some time. So I'm actually working, but I'm between meetings. So I'm going to sneak some time because life has been so crazy and I'm trying to make all the videos I can. So if you hear any weird noises, it's probably my work computer in the background. And, but what I wanted to do, oh, there'll also probably be noise from outside. I have the window open. It is like a perfect, well, almost perfect. It's a little warm for me, but it's like a perfect fall day. Other than that, I'm, a lover of like 50 degrees. I wanted to share with you just some thoughts on why I've reconnected with writing out readings. In the last few years, really in the last year, I've started doing them more face to face, and I definitely do them by video a lot, and that's fine. You know what I mean? And I think it's there's a reason why people like them that way, because it's more personal and it's more conversational. Even if it's a video, there's more like of a give and take. There's more dialogue there, and you can sort of see the mind at work, which is also really interesting. On the other hand, there are a lot of benefits to writing out readings, even if you're reading for yourself, by the way, that I think are undervalued. So and again, I'm a writer, so of course you could say, well, I'm better at writing out readings because I'm a writer. But actually, what it does, and the reasons I like doing it, is it allows me to do all the math internally, or sort of backstage, and then present the querent or the client with an answer that's concise. So, not everyone wants that. Some people want the experience of like hearing out the full reading, but some people just want an answer. I used to write really long readings when I started, because I've talked about this before. I used to read for the American Tarot Association's free reading network and the free tarot network, and I would write these long, sort of epic, and these were one card readings. I would go into all this nuance. And one of my mentors, I can't remember which one, said, no one wants that. No one wants to hear that. They want to know the answer to their question. And my ego is always so damaged by that, because I would say, but I have all this amazing stuff to share with them. I'm so smart. And they don't, again, it depends on the client. Everyone's different. But most people, want an answer to the question at some point. And for a free reading network, usually they were people who wanted the answer right away. So there's the motorcycles coming down the road. So anyway, I'm a fan of written readings, because I can do all the heavy lifting, behind the curtain, and then come back with an answer. What I will usually do, because I write out the whole process, is I kind of put the math at the bottom of it. You can see this a little bit if you go to my Etsy shop, because I put my written readings, some examples of every spread on my shop has a written example. And what I do is I kind of answer the question in like a summary, and then I go back and say, here's how I got there. It's sort of like showing your work in a math test. And you'll hear me talk about this a lot, the sort of math of reading. I hate math. So this is like fun math. All right. So what I thought I would do in this video is I would do like a 9-card reading, and you could hear me talk through it. And if you've watched my videos before, you can hear me talk through it. And you can hear me, my sort of rambling, stuttery response. Then what I thought I would do is do another one, pause, go off and write it, and then come back and read you my answer. And you can see just sort of how much faster it goes. And the kind of specificity I'm able to achieve in doing that. All right, so let me just go ahead and start. I love questions. I love readings that involve questions. So I'm going to say that we have a question for this reading, which is that Jennifer wants to know whether there's still any spark left in her relationship of 10 years. So I am using, this is the Jean Noblet tarot, recreated by Flournoy. It was here and it's small, so it's easy to do 9-card readings with in a video. I was wrestle with whether or not to use my Marseille decks or my Pip decks in videos, because I know that it's a turnoff to some folks that don't want to see the quote boring cards, or they want more pictorial pips. But it was here, and this is one of my go-to decks. I usually have this one or the Marshmallow Marseille in my backpack. And I do use reversals with Marseille decks, interestingly, as I've talked about before. I don't do them for Rider-Waite-Smith style decks, interestingly. I use them partly because it just gives me a little more sense of nuance for the reading, but also if you watched my video on the court cards, I've started using reversals with the court cards to figure out whether the card upright or reversed indicates someone else in their life or not. Let's fix the exposure on this a little bit, because my lighting isn't great. All right. So, she wants to know whether there's any spark left in her relationship. The way that I do this, traditionally with a 9-card reading, is to start with the middle card and pair it with the top left. This is sort of a Lenormand technique I think I learned from Kelly Fitzgerald, The Truth and Story. Sometimes, if I'm prepared to do that, I'll also look at the bottom row first as like a foundation to see what everything is sitting on. But I'm going to go ahead and talk through this, and it's going to, take me a while because I have 6 3-card readings essentially to do, and really 7 because I have also this pairing. The pairing gives me the theme for the reading, so it sort of gives me the answer initially, and then it allows me to validate that answer with the rest of the spread. All right, so Jennifer wants to know if there's any spark left in her relationship of 10 years. We've got the Knight of Swords upright in the middle. That would be her partner, I would gather, because it's someone else, because it's upright. Reversed core cards in my system are upside down, paired with the 5 of Swords. So we've got conflict right out of the gate, but not necessarily a bad thing. I think what's interesting is that her partner is forcing her to disrupt her thinking. He's being disruptive. There may be some fighting between them, which is one thing that may be making her wonder whether they're worth sort of, is there anything left in the relationship, because there's a lot of fighting. The 5 of Swords is words as much as thoughts, and so conflict and thoughts with the Knight of Swords. Her partner in the center of the meaning says to me that, in the center of the reading, suggests that there's a great deal of, energy that he takes up in her life. He's sort of the center of her world in a lot of ways. So there's some interesting things going on there. They're probably fighting a lot. But that could be, that may sound like a negative, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. It could be that keeps them on their toes. The 5 of Swords here is upright, so it's not in its shadow mode. So the conflict and the fighting, the bickering, could just be part of the natural thing that exercises us. And her partner, being the Knight of Swords, is likely just sort of a naturally combative person who enjoys the fighting, who enjoys conflict, who enjoys bickering and engaging in like little wars of words and things like that. Gosh, I cannot stop myself from kicking the tripod. So I've got sort of a initial thesis now that there's conflict and there's sort of disruption and fighting, but not necessarily in a bad way. Now I'm going to read the rows and the columns. So the row at the top, we start again with the 5 of Swords. We've got the Ace of Wands and the 2 of Cups reversed. So, again, there may be noise. There's the construction down the road. They keep closing off streets around my apartment, so I can never really get home the way I want to. So if you hear that beeping in the background, it's more annoying construction. My aim with 3 cards, sets of 3, is to sort of identify them and then come up with one answer that the three of them they work together. So again, we've got this fighting, but we've also got this like there's definitely some like sexual energy involved. There's I mean, initially she asked if there's a spark of the relationship. That's the question I'm working towards answering. This card suggests that yeah, there's a spark, but it seems to be a little more sexual than emotional at this point. And in fact, they may like it, the 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 makeup sex or just the sort of like angry, rougher sexuality may be another thing that keeps them going, but the pairing may be sort of withering a little bit. So the emotional part may be withering, where the physical isn't. The physical is still there; it's still working. This is a very like the Ace of Wands to me is always very sexual in its way, especially when it's about relationships. I mean, but I mean, it has like sperm shapes coming out of this phallic object. I mean, it's hard not to see that, I guess. But it's also a very masculine card in that way. So another thing that could be bothering her emotionally is that the relationship exists and the sexuality sort of exists on his terms. Again, he's the center of the wheel here. Now, when I look at this middle row, we have another five. We've got the five of pentacles this time, and this time or coins, and this time it's reversed. So we are looking at kind of a shadow aspect of this card right now, and so this guy is sort of causing maybe financial or responsibility disruptions in her life as well. And the knight is sort of pushing towards that card, so he's really got his eye on their finances or on his responsibilities beyond the relationship that are focusing him away from her. And if we look at the card here, we have the page of wands. That's her because it's upside down. So he's sort of focusing more on his responsibilities to the detriment of her interests and her passions. Now she is reversed, so that's how I know this is her. But she's also a page, which suggests she's probably a little unrealistic and a little immature about how she views relationships. That's not to say she's a bad person, but that she is likely probably not well experienced in them. She's probably not all that well versed. And she has a sense and a belief that they should be super fiery and passionate all the time, when her partner's thinking about like, hey, we can't really afford all these things we do, for example. And that's causing conflict between them too, because where she wants sort of like fantasy, when she wants her knight in shining armor, her knight is sort of saying, boy, we really need to make more money because these practical details are kind of not good right now. So then I look at the bottom row, and we've got the Three of Cups reversed, we've got the Star, and we've got Temperance reversed. So, sort of matching the Three of Cups with the Two of Cups, again, there's sort of like a withering of emotion, like where things should be growing and they should be sort of coming together. They're not, you know what I mean? So emotionally, there's something that's sort of stunted there. They may have gone as far as they can go as a pair. But there's hope there. And she definitely has a sense of direction. Although if you look at the way the Star is looking at the Three of Cups, it's kind of like she sees it. And if we look at the visual language, she's, all these cups are upside down, and her cups are upside down too in the Star. She's dumping everything out. Well, I need a stronger tripod to withstand my craziness. So she's kind of looking at this. She sees that things aren't going. That's probably the justification for this question, is that she sort of already knows she's not feeling what she once did. Interestingly, the Temperance is kind of doing the same thing. And if we look at this card reversed, the sort of pouring back and forth of water reversed is like it's going everywhere, rather than the ability to sort of pour those two decanters back and forth together. The water's kind of spilling everywhere. This is a very watery row, and the whole reading, if I talked about earlier, this is the foundation. The whole reading is sitting on this water, so it's probably very fluid. It goes wherever it wants to. There's not a lot of structure to it. There's not a lot of stability to it. So while there's hope and maybe even like a sense of direction, like a goal, it's not it's not growing and it's not developing as it should. And if I look at temperance reversed as sort of intemperance, I come back to the conflict that I started with this sort of the the five of swords. I said that was not necessarily a bad thing, but it doesn't necessarily look overall like the reading is in good health. The relationship rather is in good health. That initial conflict may be sort of the spark that's left is just whatever they fight about. You know, they may only have in common what they're battling, and they may be battling each other. So now I look at the columns again to find more information. So I've got the Five of Swords, I've got the Five of Coins reversed, and the Three of Cups reversed. So here's an interesting row, because again, we come back to conflict. Now, contextually, they mean different things because they're paired differently, but we're starting with conflict again, and this is a very conflicting row. It's a very disruptive row. So they're probably fighting about money, and the romance is gone. You know, so there's conflict about money, instability with money, disruption with money. There's fighting there. It's good that they're fighting about it, probably because it's something that they need to focus on. But the emotions aren't fun, and they're not. It's not helping their romance. It's not helping their relationship grow. In the middle row, Ace of Wands, Knight of Swords, Hope. I'm sorry, the Star. Hope, the Star. This guy is a very like powerful presence. I would say she's definitely still attracted to him, and she definitely feels like there's hope for them. She really wants this to work. She's really attracted to this guy, and you know, the things about him that maybe drive her nuts and that are making her feel like she's like the relationship isn't salvageable. The things about him that are contributing to that are probably also the things she's drawn to. You know, and she sort of finds that strength and assuredness sexy. In the final column, we have the Two of Cups reversed, Page Page of Wands reversed, and Temperance reversed. So this entire row is reversed. So we're dealing entirely with shadow. We have kind of partnership that's stunted. We've got this passionate but sort of naive person and this kind of intemperance. So this idealism of the querent, of the client here, is really kind of causing chaos, and it's stopping them from actually being a partnership. So now that I've looked at the whole spread, my job as a reader is to make this make sense. You know, and if in a video reading, I would have done more or less what I just did without the commentary on the noises outside or my bumping the tripod. But I would go through and I would talk through the meanings as I just did. That's the math part. Now comes like the solving the problem, so to speak. So she asked the question, is there any spark left in this 10-year relationship? So I'm checking back in with the question and everything I just saw. Something that happens too often with readers is that we stop, and I've been guilty of this many times, we stop here. So we interpret the combinations, or we interpret the spread, and we say that's what the cards mean. But we have to come back and check in with the question and say, did I answer the question? And I've answered the question in many ways. If you go back and sort of rewatch what I just said, you know, I've kind of wishy-washed back and forth. The thing I don't like about using my phone to make videos is that when someone calls, the video cuts out. That's frustrating. Anyway, what I was saying after I bumped the camera and got a phone call is that I have to synthesize all of this into an answer to a question. The answer to the question was, is there a spark left in this relationship? Having gone through everything I've talked through, I have to kind of replay all of that in my mind and answer the question. I do think there's a spark left in this relationship, primarily because that Ace of Wands in the middle. Yes, there's something there, but you're both focused on different things. Your partner is focused on solving your practical difficulties. You're focused on the romance and what you should be feeling and getting out of it. And that's stopping the emotional development that you need to sustain it further another 10 years. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, the spark is still there, but it's really washed out with all these other elements. And you have a very passionate nature and you're very hopeful. But what needs to happen is is a bit more balance and a bit more focus on the practical matters and less on the fantasy. If you're only thinking about the attraction, if you're only thinking about the passion, if you're only thinking about the feelings, you're leaving your partner to do all the responsible stuff. And that means they can't sort of be the knight in shining armor. They have to be more practical. They have to cut through the bullshit. So yeah, the spark's still there, but if you don't sort of find a way to measure your intemperance in a way, you're gonna find that the spark dies. So if this were a real reading, I'd probably try to be a little more diplomatic about what I just said. On the other hand, after rambling for how long now? Well, I can't see because it stopped on me. For 10-15 minutes. The thing that I want them to walk away with is that, yes, the spark is there, but if they don't find a way to measure and balance their passions and feelings with the day-to-day stuff, the spark will die. That's the thing I need them to hear. That's the thing they need to hear. And so if I am super diplomatic and vague about that after 15 minutes of yapping, they may just walk away with the stuff they want to hear. So sometimes I've come more and more to believe that sometimes at the end of a reading, especially a spoken one, saying something sharp, though it may not necessarily be what they want to hear, will be more memorable. And if they walk out there being irritated with me, but they still learn something, then the reading was more useful than if they sort of were able to hear what they want to hear. All right. So that's kind of how a verbal go. This is because my brain moves faster than my mouth does. That's how a verbal reading would really go for me. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to... let's work with the same question, actually, so you can see how differently it answers. I'm going to draw 9 more cards to answer the same question. But I'm going to... After I draw the cards, I'm going to go off, write the reading out, and come back with my answer and share that. And I'll read through sort of what I did for you. So let me shuffle the cards. It's not a real reading, so I obviously don't have to shuffle too much. All right, so there's our spread. Can you see it? Ish. Yeah, you can see it. All right, so I'm going to come back. I'm going to go away, write the reading out, and I'll come back. All right. So, I've gone off and done my work. So just to reiterate, the question was Jen again, and she wanted to know if there's any spark in her 10-year relationship. My answer is yes, there's still a spark. But your sense of feeling alone in this, and your partner's wish that you be more rational, are keeping you both from seeing eye to eye in any real way, or communicating in any real way. If you both cut through your bad habits, you'll find that partnership renewed. So that's what this all yielded for me in a really concise way. What I do then, is I send them that, but I also talk through how I got there. And just to sort of, reiterate it. There's something, again, that's much more terse and quick about what I just did. You know what I mean? Like you don't get the whole journey there. You can read through it, and I'll read through my notes in a second so you can see how I got there. But what I did was I'm able to start with the answer and say, yeah, there's a spark here, but, and then sort of talk about why I see what I see. But, you get the answer, and you don't have to kind of listen to me sort of struggle through. And actually, this was a one. I'm glad that this is the one that I ended up writing out, because this was not easy, particularly because I traditionally, as not traditionally, recently have started looking at the reversed court as the person and the upright court as the people in their lives. I had the king and queen of swords here, which was I had to really spend some time figuring out what that meant. And what I actually ended up doing to start sort of showing you my math, so to speak, was I realized that the king represents my querent here, my client Jen. So what I did was I looked for the king's partner, which would stereotypically be the queen, right? And when I looked at this row, I saw a queen sort of looking through this seven of cups, which becomes important, at the king, and sort of saying like, "Oh, I wish my king were actually this." So I have a partner who's very rational, sort of looking through all this emotional blech at a king that's more rational than the King of Cups. Do you know? So that was an interesting row, but I had to really kind of fight it out and sort of sweat it out as I worked through the writing of it. So just to sort of summarize how I got where I did, the opening combo was the Seven of Swords and the King of Cups reversed, and that told me that she feels like she's the only one feeling the way she does. Combined with the first row, which is the King of Cups, the Chariot, and the Pope reversed. She's wise enough to know what she's going through. She feels like everything's moving backwards, and whatever sort of like stability they stood on in the past is kind of withering. So, there is like the reason that she feels the way she is there. You know what I mean? She feels like things are moving backwards. The second row was the two swords courts and the seven of swords, and I already described that, but her partner is looking at someone more rational and sort of wishing like, why is all this emotional stuff getting in the way of like what could be a really great and rational partnership. The third row, the Six of Cups, the Devil reversed, and the Two of Cups, was a reminder that we can get addicted to being in relationships and feeling good all the time, and that when we're in a relationship, we feel like we have to feel good all the time, and like the relationship is always romantic. That becomes an addiction. Column one, King of Cups, King of Swords, Six of Cups. Was really the thing that reminded me that there might still be a spark here. It's because they're so different, they actually can stir up good feelings in each other, but they have to recognize that difference. The column two, which is the middle column, the Chariot, the Seven of Cups, and the Devil reversed. If we keep moving into our own feelings without looking outward, if we keep moving inward in the way we feel, then we end up becoming trapped rather than going outward and exploring like what's happening with the other person. And then the final column, basically that combo of the Pope, the Queen of Swords, and the Two of Cups was like, hey, look, if you can sort of like cut through all the old bad habits, all the old things that have been lingering there, you actually can experience some emotional growth. So that's how I got where I did, which is like, yeah, there's spark here, but you're looking at this as like the victim, and he's looking at this as like from the rational point of view. And if you can try to see each other from each other's point of view, if you can communicate it, if you can break through your bad habits, you can renew that spark. So, but really all the client may want to know is the first thing I said. Yes, there's still a spark, but your sense of feeling alone in this and your partner's wish that you be more rational is keeping you from seeing eye to eye or communicating. If you cut through those bad habits, you'll find the partnership renewed. Like, all of the stuff that's in here may be interesting, but it doesn't necessarily... It contributes to the ultimate answer that I came up with, but it's not necessarily the answer. If you think about my final answer, like, I didn't kind of get into the addiction stuff down here. And I could add that in, but the reality was that helped me get to my final destination, but this isn't the final destination. The answer is the final destination. So like this helped me get there. It helped me get a sense of like victimhood from my client, which reinforced the idea that she may not be the most rational person. And obviously this is a fake reading, you know what I mean? So, and despite the fact that I switched king and queen gender wise. It sort of, you know, confirms to some gender stereotypes. But again, this is just an example. But the point is, like, what the client needs to know is the answer to the question. They may be interested in how we got there, and I can give them that, in the notes. Here's how I arrived where I did, but here's the answer. Now, as always, this is my experience. This is my impression. These are my feelings on things. So, don't feel like if you don't agree with me, that's a bad thing. You know what I mean? But I have found as a reader, like I want to give an answer that's useful, and as a client, frequently I don't want to be taught how to read. I want to know. I want the help I'm looking for. I want the answer I'm looking for. So some people are really really good at doing readings out loud. I think I'm okay at it. I think I will I get there eventually, but you have to go through it. So I really prefer the written portion more because I feel like I can just get there more easily. And in fact, doing this took less time, even doing the reading, because I was able to sort of look at everything quickly and say, oh, this means this, this means this, this means this. Because what I didn't have to do is explain to anybody that the Seven of Cups is sort of like, introspection, internalization plus emotion or relationships, because I knew that already, so I could kind of talk in shorthand and get where I needed to get. So this is just a case for exploring written readings. And I have to tell you that when I do readings for myself, I frequently will write them out for the very reason that it allows me kind of a distance and it allows me to do the math without doubting myself. And again, that doesn't work for everybody, but when I'm reading for myself, it's like when I go through and do the work on paper, and I can boil it down to an answer, I'm less sort of likely to skip or to go the easy way, which is what happens when I read for myself. If I pulled the spread for myself, I'd say, okay, I know what that means, and then like sweep the cards back up. This doing the work on paper makes me do the work. So anyway, I thought I would just share that with you, and hope this helps and just give you a little more insight into how my reading mind works. And to, make a case for written readings as beneficial. Now, when I do read for others, I give them a choice, and I say, hey, here's what's great about a video reading. You're gonna hear me talk through it, and it's gonna be more like a real face-to-face experience. You'll hear how I got where I got. The benefit of a written reading is that you'll get your answer. It takes me less time to do it. I'll probably get it to you today. A video reading takes me a day or two. And you get your answer fast. So anyway, that's that I thought I would share. So hope you're well. Be good.